Toto Wolff reportedly arrived at the Nürburgring expecting to watch Max Verstappen have fun in a GT car. Instead, he watched Verstappen almost conquer the green hell. Because against elite endurance racing specialists, on the most dangerous circuit in modern motorsport, Verstappen's Mercedes-AMG GT3 locked fourth on the grid, less than 1 second away from pole position over a 25-kilometer lap with more than 150 corners. That is not normal. That is terrifying. Most drivers need years to feel comfortable at the Nürburgring. Max looked competitive almost immediately. But here is where the story becomes unbelievable. Mercedes actually pulled Verstappen out of the car before the final pole shootout, even after he delivered one of the fastest laps of the entire weekend. Why would a team remove their fastest driver before the biggest session? Because inside the garage, they already understood something the rest of Formula One was only beginning to realize. Max Verstappen was not driving like a Formula One champion trying endurance racing for fun. He was driving like somebody who could dominate it. And once darkness, traffic, exhaustion, and possible rain swallowed the Nürburgring overnight, even Formula One drivers started realizing this performance could change how the entire motorsport world sees Verstappen forever. At first, most people inside Formula One thought this Nürburgring weekend would be simple. Max Verstappen showing up, driving a Mercedes GT3 for fun, putting in a few fast laps, then going back to Formula One. But within hours, that entire narrative collapsed. Because the Nürburgring does not allow fake performances. This place exposes drivers brutally. More than 25 kilometers of blind corners, forests, bumps, narrow sections, and over 150 turns where one tiny mistake can destroy a car instantly. There are no easy laps here. No comfortable moments. Drivers barely get time to breathe before another corner arrives. Imagine sprinting through a dark mountain road while the asphalt keeps changing underneath you every few seconds. That is the green hell. And Verstappen looked comfortable almost immediately. That is what stunned the paddock first. Thursday already hinted something unusual was happening. The conditions were terrible. Cold temperatures. Semi-wet asphalt. Yellow flags constantly interrupting rhythm. Normally, those conditions punish newcomers immediately. Experienced Nürburgring specialists usually dominate when grip becomes unpredictable. But Verstappen still looked fast. Calm. Controlled. Then Friday changed everything. The circuit dried. Grip improved. And Verstappen unleashed an 8-minute, 11.614 lap during top qualifying 2. That single lap completely changed the atmosphere around the event. Because the gap between Verstappen and pole position was less than half a second over the entire Nordschleife. Half a second. Across more than 25 kilometers. That sounds almost impossible. It is like two runners finishing a marathon separated by one step. And suddenly, Formula One drivers quietly started paying attention. Because Verstappen was not racing against random names. These were elite endurance racing specialists. Drivers who have spent years mastering the Nürburgring. Some know every bump and braking point better than certain Formula One drivers know Monaco. And Max instantly looked like he belonged with them. But here's where the situation became even more fascinating. The Verstappen racing garage never reacted emotionally. No wild celebrations. No surprise. Everything looked calm, professional, almost expected. That tells you something very important. Inside the team, they already believed the Mercedes-AMG GT3 had genuine pace capable of fighting near the front. And suddenly, this stopped feeling like a publicity appearance. Now it looked serious. Especially because endurance racing exposes qualities Formula One sometimes hides. Traffic management, mental endurance, patience under pressure. The ability to stay calm while conditions constantly change around you. At the Nürburgring, drivers never relax. Faster GT3 cars constantly fight through slower traffic. One wrong decision can erase an entire race instantly. And Verstappen looked strangely comfortable inside all of it. That is what started impressing Formula One drivers the most. Not just the speed. The control. Because anybody can attack one qualifying lap. Very few drivers stay composed through chaos. And somewhere inside the Nürburgring paddock, Toto Wolff was reportedly watching all of this happen in real time. Not through television cameras. Not through social media clips. Right there beside the green hell. Watching Max Verstappen adapt to one of the hardest races in motorsport faster than almost anybody expected. And that is when the atmosphere around this entire weekend started changing completely. Because now the paddock was no longer asking whether Verstappen could survive endurance racing. Now they were asking something much more dangerous. How good could he actually become at it? But the deeper this Nürburgring weekend went, the more uncomfortable the situation became for the rest of motorsport. Because Verstappen was not just showing speed. He was showing control. And at the Nürburgring, control is what separates survivors from wrecked cars. Anybody can attack for one lap. Very few drivers stay precise for hours around a circuit this dangerous. That is why Mercedes made the decision that completely confused fans watching qualifying. Before the final pole shootout, Verstappen stepped out of the car. Instead, the team handed the Mercedes to Danny Juncadella, one of the most experienced Nürburgring specialists in the field. At first, people thought something was wrong. Why remove the driver who had just delivered one of the fastest laps of the weekend? But the deeper reason revealed how serious this project actually is. Verstappen Racing was already thinking beyond qualifying. They were thinking about survival. Because the Nürburgring 24 hours destroys drivers mentally before it destroys them physically. Traffic never stops. Pressure never disappears. And one tiny mistake can erase an entire weekend instantly. Imagine trying to solve impossible math problems while sprinting through a thunderstorm for an entire day and night. That is endurance racing here. So the team protected Verstappen early. No unnecessary risks. No emotional decisions. Just strategy. And suddenly, rival teams started understanding something dangerous. This was not a celebrity appearance anymore. This looked like a real endurance racing operation. Especially once the numbers from qualifying became impossible to ignore. Pole position was an 8-minute, 11.123 lap. Verstappen's earlier run was less than half a second slower. Over 25 kilometers. That difference is microscopic. Especially on a track this enormous. And this is where the rest of the paddock started paying very close attention. Because endurance racing works differently from Formula 1. The fastest car over one lap does not always win. Sometimes the smartest team wins. Sometimes the calmest driver wins. Sometimes the team that survives the night wins. And Verstappen suddenly looked perfectly built for all of it. Especially because the Nürburgring night changes everything psychologically. Once darkness arrives, drivers lose visual references. Headlights bounce through fog. Cars appear suddenly through blind corners. Visibility disappears in sections of forest. Fatigue builds slowly until concentration begins fading. That is usually when newcomers start making mistakes. But Verstappen looked frighteningly calm. That may be the biggest reason Formula 1 drivers started reacting differently after this performance. Because speed impresses people. Control scares them. And Max was showing both. But here is where things become even more dangerous for the rest of the field. According to the report, rain remained one of the biggest unknowns heading into the race. And rain at the Nürburgring is complete chaos. One section feels dry. Another feels like ice. Drivers commit to braking points without fully knowing what grip level waits ahead. That uncertainty destroys confidence instantly. But Verstappen has built his entire Formula 1 career around adapting faster than almost anyone when conditions become unstable. Wet races. Changing grip. Pressure moments. The worse conditions become, the calmer he usually gets. And suddenly, the paddock started connecting all the pieces together. Because if Max Verstappen can adapt this quickly to one of the hardest endurance races in the world, what happens if he fully commits himself to this kind of racing one day? That question is exactly why this Nürburgring performance started feeling much bigger than a simple GT race. It felt like the motorsport world was discovering a completely different side of Verstappen's talent in real time. And this is where the Nürburgring stopped feeling like a race, and started feeling like a psychological war. Because once the sun begins rising after a brutal night, endurance racing changes completely. Drivers are exhausted. Cars carry damage. Teams stop thinking about speed and start thinking about survival. That is the moment where pressure becomes unbearable. And somehow, Verstappen looked stronger the longer the race continued. That is what shocked so many people inside the paddock. Most Formula 1 drivers are trained for short bursts of maximum intensity. Qualifying laps. 2-hour races. Perfect tire management. But endurance racing demands something completely different. Patience. Mental endurance. The ability to stay calm while your body and mind are completely drained. And Verstappen suddenly looked naturally built for all of it. Especially during traffic. Because traffic at sunrise becomes terrifying. Some drivers are still recovering mentally from the night. Others become desperate trying to recover positions. Visibility changes every lap as sunlight cuts through fog and trees. And one wrong overtake can erase 20 hours of work instantly. That is why experienced Nürburgring specialists are respected so much. But here is the uncomfortable truth spreading through the paddock. Verstappen did not look like a newcomer anymore. He looked like somebody adapting faster than expected to one of the hardest environments in motorsport. And the numbers made the situation even more serious. The Mercedes remained competitive after locking fourth on the grid, proving the pace from qualifying was absolutely real. That matters enormously. Because endurance races expose fake speed very quickly. A car might look fast for one lap. But over 24 hours, weakness always appears eventually. Mechanical failures. Tire degradation. Driver mistakes. Strategy collapses. The Nürburgring punishes every flaw. And yet Verstappen Racing kept looking composed. Calm pit stops. Disciplined decisions. No panic. That atmosphere tells you everything about how serious this project actually is. This was not a publicity stunt anymore. It looked like a genuine attempt to compete against the best endurance teams in the world. And suddenly, Formula One drivers watching this unfold started realizing something fascinating. Verstappen may actually enjoy this type of racing differently. In Formula One, Max often dominates from the front. At the Nürburgring, domination is impossible. Chaos always arrives eventually. Traffic always changes the race. Weather always creates uncertainty. That unpredictability forces drivers to adapt constantly. And adaptation might be Verstappen's greatest strength of all. Because the more unstable conditions become, the more comfortable he often looks. That is extremely rare. Especially at the Nürburgring. And maybe that explains why so many people inside motorsport reacted so strongly after this night race. Not because Verstappen survived it. Because he appeared to understand it. There is a huge difference. One driver survives chaos. Another driver learns how to control it. And during the most difficult moments of the Nürburgring night, Verstappen started looking frighteningly close to the second category. Which creates a possibility that suddenly feels impossible to ignore anymore. If Max Verstappen can become this competitive, this quickly, in one of the most brutal endurance races on Earth, then maybe Formula One is only showing part of what he is truly capable of. And maybe that is why Toto Wolff reportedly looked so stunned watching this entire situation unfold. Because what started as a GT race appearance suddenly began feeling much bigger. Not just another Verstappen victory story. The beginning of a completely new chapter in his career. One where the green hell may have revealed something Formula One alone could never fully expose. How far Max Verstappen's talent actually goes once the limits disappear.